secret location in the city that moves mountains.
Greetings.
I came here to chew bubblegum, and I'm out of bubblegum, so I'd rather just artfully articulate myself in a manner that would not result in physical contact.
Okay.
I'm not Dirty Dan. I'm Dingy Dave, Dirty Dan's third cousin, and I'm not as strong as him, so I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover.
Oh, yes. That is a friend of the show and host of Talk Junkie Retro Cult, co-host of the newest podcast, believe it or not, setting in for Dirty Dan today. Thank you very much, Justin. Thank you for setting in. Glad to have you here. I always love recording with you.
Well, I'm tickled to death to be here. I hate that it couldn't be with Dan and Rebecca, but I'm glad to get to fill in anyway.
Yes, well, Dirty Dan and Rebecca are tied up on a special detail. They will be back next week. I won't be here next week, but we'll talk about that before we close out the show. Justin, I have something to play for you. Some unknown person called and left a voicemail on the Here to Chew Bubblegum show phone. So without further ado, here we are.
I like Justin's pretty mouth. Justin got a pretty mouth. I'd like to make him squeal like a pig. Squeal for me, turkey. Squeal!
And so, Justin, there's one of your fans. What do you think about that?
Well, it won't be the first time I've been made to squeal like a pig, but I mean, I'll take what I can get. I'm an insecure person. Anytime somebody likes me, I'm good with that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there was no callback number. That was from a blocked number. So, but I thought, well, it's the perfect time. He's coming by Sunday. We'll just play that for him. Now, we are going to read just a few listener emails this week. But before we do, I have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Your quote on Facebook was after you saw it, and I've got it wrote down word for word. I loved it probably more than I should have. Having said that, Bill Murray disappointed me for the first time in my entire life. What did you mean by that, my friend?
I'm a huge Bill Murray fan.
Yes.
I mean, a huge Bill Murray fan. Probably the only person that really, and I wouldn't even, he's probably equal to Bill Murray, is Chevy Chase. Another guy who's disappointed me many times in my life. I know all the rumors about them both being really hard to work with. They couldn't stand each other, and you know how tense things were on Caddyshack. But as Chevy Chase has the reputation of being a jerk 90% of the time, Bill Murray doesn't have that reputation. He just has a reputation of being hard to work with. But when, you know, they've been talking about this for 32 years, and I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, and I was so excited to see that movie. Spoiler alert, give you time to turn it off. Bill Murray is in the movie. I watched a lot of interviews with Bill Murray coming up to the movie.
Right.
And all he really did was complain. And he normally does that, but he normally does it in a joking way. He didn't complain in a joking way. He just complained, and that was off-putting, but that is kind of Bill Murray. And then I watched the movie, and he just didn't want to be there.
Do you think his age now has a little something to do with it as to why he may have seemed off on his acting game?
If he didn't have the reputation of being that way all the time in the past, then maybe. Plus, like I seen St. Vincent or whatever it was a couple years back. Good movie. I mean, like I've seen him in recent stuff, and he's always good. He just didn't want to be there. And to be honest with you, I'd just rather he hadn't been there because Ernie Hudson wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And Dan Aykroyd wanted to be there. I don't know. It just kind of disappointed me. And it really, to me, it took away from the movie because, you know, I'm sitting there, I was like, I'd kill to be a part of that franchise. I think a lot of kids that are people that I was like a kid watching it. A lot of people that grew up watching it as a kid and watched it later would have. And he just, I don't know. I was disappointed. And it has permanently altered the way I look at Bill Murray.
All right. So from the first time, and I think his first line in this one was like, "Hey, we're from the home office," or something similar to that. So you think his acting skills acted in that whole scene?
Yeah,
Okay.
it really wasn't. I mean, obviously he's a great actor.
Yeah.
It's just you can tell when somebody doesn't want to do something, and
Right.
he didn't. And maybe I was somewhat tainted by the fact that a lot of people have talked about how badly he didn't want to do it, and it shows he didn't want to do it, and I don't understand that. Like,
What did you think about one of the bonus scenes at the end when they had Sigourney Weaver with him and her there?
I liked it. It didn't get me as excited as the last one, because I think that means there's going to be another movie,
Right.
And I think Ernie Hudson, who deservingly is excited about the franchise, is going to get to be in it. I don't know. It's literally my favorite movies are comedy movies. They just always have been comedy and martial arts. That's all I was ever really into. And my two favorite comedic actors are Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. And for whatever reasons, neither one of them are really nice people. And it come back to haunt Chevy Chase to the point that just basically nobody wanted to work with him.
Right.
And he was in a new movie on Netflix a couple years back, and it was good. And he was in the Vacation remake, and it was okay. But Bill Murray has had maybe issues of being flaky and not showing up and stuff like that. But I've not heard as many people go, well, he's just a bad guy and this and that. But from the time they started filming this thing, because you got to look, I think they started filming this in 18 or 19 at this point, because it's supposed to come out last year and didn't.
It was 19.
Like, ever since they started, he doesn't want to do it. All he does is complain. I was like, oh, I mean, that's him. He'll still be good in the movie. And then I watched the movie, and then I made that tweet and seriously disappointed Elliot, I believe. It may have changed his feelings on me for the rest of his life. But I don't know. I love the movie.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be honest. That movie was one of the best movies that have come out in theaters probably in the last 6 or 7 years.
I talked to a lot of people who didn't like it, but all those people who didn't like it weren't huge fans of the original. And somebody asked me, if you didn't like the original so much, would you have liked that? I don't know, because I can't separate those two things. The original two movies were two of my favorite movies ever. But now Elliot made a comment on the last podcast they did, their Thanksgiving podcast, that it's now his second favorite Ghostbusters. It's not my second favorite. It's number 3. They go sequential in order as favorites.
But if you think about it for a second, in this Ghostbusters Afterlife, they didn't touch on anything from Ghostbusters 2. It was based on the original film.
Yeah, they didn't really mention it. But if you look at the timeline, the number of years they say it is, and you kind of roughly do it, it's actually roughly falls in after the second one. But,
Right.
I mean, just as far as my favorite, as far as what I liked the first one the best. Actually, the first one and the second one are so close, it's really hard for me to make a decision. And in this one, but I was excited from the time it started until the time it stopped. I was sad that Rick Moranis didn't make it back. But, you look at why he quit acting and what he done, you can't have anything but respect for him. I think it would have been cool, even if it was a post-credit screen.
Right,
I think it would have been cool to have had him back, because now I think he's actually back to acting.
Yeah, he is.
But it's been since they filmed this.
Yeah. So you're a huge Bill Murray fan. What is your second? All right, or what is a Bill Murray movie where he is co-starred in and not starred in? What is your favorite movie with Bill Murray as a co-star? For me, it would be Ed Wood. I think he did a great job in that.
That's hard, because I guess he's got such a big name. I don't look at him necessarily as a co-star, but if with a really big cast, what's the one with Owen Wilson and Gene Hackman?
I know the one you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it.
Is it Royal Tenenbaums?
Yeah.
That would probably be, because, I mean, like I said, it's hard to. The only movie of his I can think that I've never seen is Lost in Translation. The only movie of his that I've never finished is The Man Who Knew Too Little. That's the only two I can think of that I've never finished. I actually had to sit and think for a minute when you said Ed Wood, because I had to think about it. I was like, where's he at in Ed Wood? And then I thought about it. But now that I think, I tell you what, there's one he done with Robert Duvall called Get Low. And I would consider Robert Duvall the star in that. And it's not a particularly funny movie all the way through, but it is a really good movie. And that would probably be my favorite movie that he's not a star.
I'll have to check that out. Did you see Ed Wood by any chance?
Yes.
Did you like it?
I don't remember being crazy about it because I literally seen it when it came out. Well, that's 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mid to late
So you
90s.
really, you need to go back and watch it now because it's like Napoleon Dynamite. The first time I ever saw Napoleon Dynamite, I hated it.
I was the same way. I was like,
I thought this was awful. But when I started watching it again, I'm like, well, and I started picking up stuff that I didn't pick up on the first time. I started picking up stuff. That's the same way with Ed Wood.
Well, Ed Wood's a fascinating guy. So, I mean.
And the movie Ed Wood's one of my favorite movies. Moving on to some listener email, then I've got one from Dixon09 that I'll start out. And then I'll let Justin go. Dixon09 says, hey, Goose and Dirty Dan, happy holidays. I was never a fan of The Office, but after last week's episode, I decided to give it another chance. I get it now. It's a really funny show. Years ago, I only watched the first few minutes of the first episode. I'm glad that I went back and rewatched others. I'm up to season 6 and wanted to say thanks for opening my eyes. Peace and love, Roswell, my friends, from Dixon09. Thank you very much, Dixon09. Yes, The Office is, always been always will be one of my favorite TV shows.
I've got to agree with Dixon09. And this is the only hipster thing you'll ever hear me say in my life, and I'm not saying it as a hipster thing. The only version of The Office I've ever seen is the Ricky Gervais version.
Yes.
And it was excellent, and I like the way the English do television series. It's a couple seasons, and they're done. They don't run it in the ground. I seen episodes of The Office just kind of on and off on TV before I seen the English version. And actually didn't know there was an English version. Sat down to watch The Office because everybody's talking about it. Watched the Ricky Gervais version and was like, this is great. And then I was like, but, where's all the people I see that are big stars in this? And it ended, and I was like, okay, so there's an American version. I've watched a couple episodes here and there on TBS. Didn't get into it. I never tried it. Same way with Seinfeld. Hated Seinfeld. I tried. A buddy of mine, Dustin Hoover, aggravated me to death. You got to watch Seinfeld. So I've been watching Seinfeld all the way through. I don't think it's as funny as people say it is, but it is an addictive show. And it's something I probably would have never watched if not for him. Then when I listened to you guys on the Office special, I was like, that means people I know. And I think me and you and even especially Eli, joking that we have a similar sense of humor. I'm like, I need to watch The Office. So I'm actually going to try it and try to get all the way through.
Well, here's funny. And I think I said it on last week. Like the British version and the American version, the first episode is pretty much the same exact script. It's just modified. But it's pretty much, if you saw the British version, you saw the U.S. version.
I need to check it out because it is, Ricky Gervais does really good in about anything he does. And I liked Derek. I thought that was a great show. He's got a newer one. My wife refuses to watch him. He says it's the most depressing show ever where his wife passes away. And he's recently said, it is more of a drama, but it's got comedy in it. And I know he had a lot to do with the American version of The Office, so I'm definitely going to check it out.
All right. I'll let you start out with some of your email. When you get to the story, just take a pause there and let me know, and I'll actually read the story that was attached to that.
Okay. Goose, I'm writing to you and the gang because I have been informed of this disturbing report of extraterrestrial deviant behavior and had to share it with you and your viewers. Before you read it, make sure everyone knows there is possible unsettling material in this case file.
Okay, and the link that he sent was to this news story. Texas man, El Paso, Texas. A man who was arrested by the FBI yesterday has confessed to kidnapping and sexually assaulting dozens of people while using costumes, drugs, and special effects to have his victims believe they have been abducted by aliens. It's true. 73-year-old Arnold White was arrested after a joint investigation led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the El Paso Sheriff's Office, and the El Paso Police Department. He was originally interrogated about 4 crimes committed in the region of the 1990s. Arnold was a retired trucker who confessed of a total of 79 kidnappings across California, Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas over a period of 40 years. Mr. White confessed to using a mixture of hallucinating drugs containing LSD and PCP to subdue his victims before approaching them and carrying them inside his truck to assault them. In order to confuse the victims even more, he had set a set up inside of his truck to look like an operating room and would also wear an alien costume. FBI spokesperson Daryl Johnson described the abuse of the afflicted to his victims as extremely disturbing. According to Mr. Johnson, most of the victims were loners, and that fact helped Mr. White evade arrest for a long time. Arnold White now faces a total of 347 criminal charges, including several charges of kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault by use of drugs. He could face 382 years in prison to life if found guilty on all counts. The 73-year-old was denied bail and will remain in detention until his trial begins in January.
First of all, a horrible human being. I don't care if they execute him.
Yes, but you have to give him credit. That's an awfully creative way to do that.
A phenomenal idea for a psychopath. I mean, I always assume that's what the government's been doing this whole time anyway. I mean, you got to give him style points. A horrible human should be executed. You got to give him style points, though. It was extremely creative. I mean,
very, very creative.
And he would have gotten away with it more than likely. I mean, it's hard enough to tell somebody if you actually see a spaceship,
right,
or if you think you've actually been abducted. How many of those people just didn't say anything because the drugs were so good and the plan worked so well that they believed it was actually aliens and they didn't want to be ridiculed for saying they saw aliens?
Yeah, and that could explain a lot of sightings. And very creative, like you said, very creative.
It is, and the guy who wrote this email very possibly could have been in on it. The email goes on to say, as upsetting as this story is, maybe sharing it on the Pandora waves will spread further awareness and hopefully prevention. I hope so. Hope all is well, gang. Roswell, Bolin Cox. Oh, P.S. As much as we all love Dirty Dan the Barbecue Man and Rebecca, a.k.a. the Queen of the Flock, out here on the trail, we were all so glad to hear Cronkite on the show last week. It's comforting knowing that he is still alive and well and okay and not a victim of sodomy and alien abduction like we had all feared. P.S. Almost forgot to wish Mother Goose well wishes. Hope she is doing better, my friend. You guys have a great week.
And thank you very much, Mr. Bolin Cox. Yes, he sent that after the Halloween show. Like I said, we are backlogged on email. I wanted to put out a few. Bolin as being one, and Dixon09 always writes some good emails. We will have a special email episode coming up sometime next month in December. We'll have it before the end of the year, where we will read and answer all backlogged email. And let me ask you your thoughts, because I have thought about, and I think I even talked about it maybe on the radio show that will be playing this week, about tweaking the format a little bit on this show. Do you think we should do that, or do you think we should leave it alone? Because I went back and forth. And as far as tweaking, what I meant was the way that we do now, we open up, we, tell about what we've done, we do listener email, we go into segment one. And I thought about maybe just doing an opening, doing like little new UFO news or science tech news, doing segment one, and then in segment two, doing listener email. What's your thoughts? Because I'm leaning more towards now of just leaving it alone and not tinkering with it.
If anyone ever listened to Talk Junk, you realize there is no format because I'm not good at it. I think... Yes, you are. I think you guys have a really good flow, but I don't think I can give a fair, objective comment on where the email should go. Just because I received an email once on Talk Junkie.
And you're the guy I was talking about. He didn't want you to read it at the first.
Just shut up and get started with the show and put it at the end. It's talkjunkie@gmail.com. I'm going to listen to your criticisms, but I'm often going to do the exact opposite. So I always read my email first. But to me, the two places it feels best to me is right at the beginning, because some people do listen to get to hear their email read. And also, like, it kind of gives you an icebreaker to ease into the show. And for people who've never, and very few people have never seen the way you do your show and stuff, like, you guys do it like a real show. And it's, I mean, things are done correctly and it's professional.
Well,
and
thank you.
For me, not so much.
Yes,
and
it is.
No, it's really not. It's just me going, I'm going to turn on the microphone and talk for a while. So for me, it makes it really easy, because if I do those email first, it kind of gives me a segue. I don't have to come straight in and start talking, because I don't have kind of the fun elements that other shows have that get people involved. The other place I think it feels good is at the main end. The only problem is, for me, especially there for a long stretch, it's not been that way lately, I do really long podcasts sometimes. And unlike, I love the Spooky Family, they listen to people too much. They've shortened theirs down. And to me, it doesn't make a difference how long a podcast episode is. If it's 2 hours and I only have an hour, it's revolutionary. I'm going to listen to an hour of it and listen to the other hour later. If it's 30 minutes and I have an hour, I'm going to listen to a 30-minute show and so much of another show. So the length of the show, I don't get where that makes a difference.
No, it don't. I mean, we've had shows that's the first couple of shows were under an hour, and then we've had shows like 3.5 hours. We have no set limit.
That if I do a really long show and put the emails at the end, which I only did maybe once or twice, people will be like, man, I sent you that email and you didn't read it. I'm like, yeah, I did. I read it on episode such and such. I'll go back and listen. And then they'll say, no, man, I didn't hear it. And I realized, you're not making it to the end of the episode. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, occasionally I do put out a short episode, but I keep mine at the beginning. Right. One, despite that person who sent me the email, which is the most fun reason for me to do it. And two, because it's a good lead-in for me. Like, I like your guys' setup, and I like it at the beginning, but I think I'm just one of those people that like it at the beginning,
Well, and, you touched on it a little bit there. I'm thinking about just leaving it alone, because there's sometimes people ask questions, and we're going to talk about that in the show, So if we talked about the subject and then read the email, that would just sound odd, like, well, we already answered that,
Yeah. Well, so sometimes I do, like, well, I don't say sometimes. I can think of maybe one or two times where I've got an email with a specific question, and I've either saved it to the end of the emails and then went straight into that topic, or maybe done a little something else. And then, because Talk Junkie has changed somewhat, and it's still, sometimes you'll get episodes that have 2 or 3 different topics, but most of the time it's one topic. It's not even really a topic. It's just kind of a guy talking crazily into a microphone for a certain amount of time. It doesn't have a lot of structure, so I can't do that. But it would be neat if you had like one really special email. Maybe that one does get saved go in a different
and we used to do that. We used to have like people that would text. We would read their comments, and then we just finally started all grouping them together, and we had a question of the week. We may do something like that. Yeah. But you can always call, text, or leave a voicemail by calling 606-373-3396, or you can email Goose at here-to-chewbubblegum.com, Dirty Dan at here-to-chewbubblegum.com, Rebecca at here-to-chewbubblegum.com, Ned or Elliot at here-to-chewbubblegum at yahoo.com. And if you want to get in touch with myself and Justin both, you can email us at believe it or not, spelled KNOTT, at here-to-chewbubblegum.com. We're going to jump ahead and jump on into segment 1, getting it rolling now. We're going to talk about the new UFO office that we heard about earlier this week. Have you heard about this story?
Yes, I have.
The Pentagon dropped a UFO surprise late Tuesday night. A new office will be created to track and assess unidentified aerial phenomenon spotted over military ranges, according to a memo from Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. The memos from Hicks specify that the new office has the job to detect, identify, and attribute unidentified objects to assess any possible threat to aviation, safety, and or national security. For decades, the Department of Defense has ridiculed and dismissed UFOs incidents and reports. It has stalled attempts by Congress and the public to access information and files related to military encounters with UFOs, including those seen over sensitive military facilities and assets, including nuclear weapon storage areas and missile bases. That's all that the article says. What's your thoughts on the new government-funded UFO office?
Well, it's a new public UFO office. Like, there's only three options here. All right, let's go with the idea that at least some or a portion of these reports are true. There's definitely aliens. There's definitely people from outer space. Let's go with something I think me and you both believe. Something very weird happened at Roswell, and it wasn't a weather balloon. This is the United States government. They want to know how much money you got in your bank if it's over $600. They know everything. Yeah. They look at everything. They've had a department to study this. I mean, we know Project Blue Book. We know Majestic 12. We know of all these different things. So this has happened so many times in the past. So, and those are things that made it public. That's just the ones that made it public. So if they're real, and I believe there is some credence to the fact that there are unidentified objects that are not ours out there, then this is not new. They're not that far behind the times. That's not the way any government works, but definitely not our government. So that's one. And if that's the case, then maybe they are so good at keeping a secret that even the Pentagon doesn't know. And this is the Pentagon's way of going, you know what, maybe we do need to look into this. But they have to know there's black budget money going to this. Or maybe it's all a ruse and they've made it all up and it's been fake this whole time. And this is just their way of kind of coming out publicly because they're getting ready to use it to their advantage. I don't see that being possible. I'm more likely to say the first one. But I assure you, either way, this is not the first department ever dedicated to studying UFOs. It's the first possibly public department that they've been open with up front. There's other stuff that went public, but this is maybe the first one they've ever publicly up front from the beginning said, yeah, we're going to look at aliens. But it's not the first one.
I think it was it may have been a couple of weeks ago, but anyway, Harry Reid reported like in 2016 or 17 that there was $26 million went to ATIP to support it happened maybe in 2006 to support their black budget stuff, and that brings in Lou Elizondo and all that. And I think it's kind of a big deal that they're creating this new office, even though this could be a front for something else. We're just going to let this information out. This one we're going to keep, hid. Maybe it's a combination with this new office.
I think it's probably a way to publicly filter what they want to get out. The argument's always been made, well, it's the era of the cell phone and the camera.
Yes. How
does anybody not have footage and it probably is getting a lot harder to hide it. And I do believe there's things they definitely want hidden. And, if there's anything out there that's not ours that's that advanced, they want to know before other countries know. And maybe this is a buffer between the organizations that we don't know about and the public in a way to disseminate information, but let out what they want to let out at the rate they want to let out.
Well, hitting closer to home, my little brother, Little Goose, messaged me at around 2:10 this morning. I was asleep, and he said he just saw a UFO. He went on to tell me that he was coming through US 23 near Jenkins, and that it just came off the top of the mountain. And he said it was a bright white object that shot across the sky and stopped in place, made a few turns that defy physics on Earth. It then zoomed off the mountains and out of sight. And I told him that he's not the only one over the past couple of years that have saw stuff like that in that area. There's actually, I think I've been 3 to 5 sightings, and one of them is on the Kentucky Highway Department of Transportation. Their cameras that they have of Pine Mountain and so forth in that area, even though that's a little bit stretched, air miles is not that far.
No, that's nothing.
And they actually have an object, I think, from 2000 and maybe 18 or 19 captured that you can see on one of their cameras. So I wanted to pass that along. If anybody listening was in the Jenkins area or Letcher County or Whitesburg last night and you did see anything, please feel free to contact us and let us know what you saw. Something that's kind of amazed me, it seems like over the last month that some of the UFO sightings have kind of died down just a little bit, and you've not got as much reports as you had earlier in the year, in the summer, this time last year. What's your thoughts on that? Have you even noticed that?
Well, no, but in fairness, I don't really watch news. But I think a lot of that is same reason people didn't get as excited as they should have about those videos that came out that the Pentagon released. I think there's kind of this oversaturation of things. I don't think... you'd have to look at maybe MUFON's files and some other stuff. I would bet you that the amount of sightings is still pretty consistent with what it was. I would think probably just the reporting as far as mass media is down because, there's a lot of other things going on in society. And also, I don't think the release of those Pentagon videos had the impact that the people who released them thought they were going to. It didn't have the impact I thought it was going to have. Like, I thought people were going to trip out because, look, you can believe either way you want to believe on what it is. You still got to find a way to explain it.
Yeah.
And I can't explain it, and it seems like a lot of people have had a hard time explaining it. I've seen people offer explanations, and then when you take the time to watch the video, it's clear that, and I'm not saying there's not an explanation for it, but the people who are attempting to explain it are kind of dumb and really don't have a clue what they're talking about. But I would say the reports are still there. I just don't think they're getting kind of the publicity they were getting.
Right. What do you think about Stonehenge?
I'm endlessly fascinated by Stonehenge, mainly because of its alignment on the summer solstice.
Okay.
That's you get into ancient civilizations and what they built and how they were able to build them. That's one of my greatest fascinations in life. That's something I could talk about. And I put an ad out the other day in a lot of different places, and I put it here. Any college professors, anybody who studies South American civilizations, ancient civilizations, the Maya, or even Aztecs and Pueblo, I would love to have somebody on Talk Junkie. I've got a couple of things I'd really like to talk about in regards to that.
There's a new story that's came out. It says Stonehenge experts have made stunning discovery that they say uncovered the Neolithic secrets of our ancestors. Last year, archaeologists were stunned after a new layer of historic landscape of Stonehenge was uncovered. Deep pits were darted across the area, creating a mile-wide circle centered on the stone monument. But the discovery was heavily contested, with many experts saying that it was merely natural features. Now, I don't buy that, and I'll read a little bit more of the story and tell you why. Another tests have proved that these large pits are human-made and date back 4,500 years. Experts believe it was a boundary to one large sacred structure. Professor Vincent Gavini, an archaeologist who led the find, said science has proved that this was indeed a huge Neolithic monument. He adds, some of the debate about the discovery in Stonehenge seemed bonkers to me. We've now looked at nearly half of them, and they're all the same. So, effectively, this does not say that this is one erroneous structure. It may have evolved from natural features, but we haven't located that, he said. So this is the largest prehistoric structure in Britain. Each of the 10 pits are 10 meters wide and 5 meters deep. Based on that, that's why I think it's not natural made.
It's too uniform.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, if you've got stuff like that, they wouldn't be the exact same sizes. To me, that indicates these were man-made. The researchers believe that these were dug by the Neolithic people who built Stonehenge. The previous unknown subterranean ring is 20 times bigger than Stonehenge. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Stonehenge is unique in one thing. One, it's hard to date because the stone itself and the cut marks and stuff you're limited on your dating, and a lot of historians don't trust kind of the methods they're having used to date it. So you're having trouble with a date. And then you have the people who want to subscribe that Stonehenge is much newer than we think it is, just based on the fact that the only thing you had in that area at that time were hunter-gatherers. There's actually been a lot of study, not just on the people who came after Stonehenge, but the people who came before Stonehenge there. And obviously, they did live somewhat of a hunter-gatherer lifestyle,
right?
But so did the people who built Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe, if it's dependent on which dating you go by with Stonehenge, is either far older than Stonehenge or somewhere around that time frame. And Göbekli Tepe changes everything we know about Neolithic construction because of its age and our ability to date it and the magnitude of the structure. But all the stuff they're finding around Stonehenge is indication of people who still hunted and kind of existed with technology that hunter-gatherers had, but they did it in more of a communal style, and that was somewhat unusual. The thing to me is we look at the date of, say, when Stonehenge was built. Well, no matter which one of those dates you agree on, you have to add some time there because, like I said, Stonehenge is aligned with the summer solstice. Actually, it comes over that headstone and shines directly into the center of that circle on the summer solstice. It took a long time for some civilization, if they figured this out on their own, to track that sun and to figure that out. So you've got a lot of time coming up before Stonehenge and probably a lot of construction before Stonehenge that had to be in place before they actually come up with it. You didn't have a bunch of hunter-gatherers traveling consistently, not farming, that had any interest whatsoever in summer solstice. And I think that's a lot of why people try to push the date further up and say, all right, this wasn't hunter-gatherer, this was more of a pagan, maybe communal society that done it. And it, to me, I've always had this idea that possibly civilization's a little bit older than we think it is. We look right around the 10,000 mark. We look really strongly at the Sumerians and look for them kind of to be the basis of, you know, what we consider modern civilization, but then Göbekli Tepe kind of predates that by a little bit. But the summer solstice thing, from Chichen Itza in South America to Egypt to Pacific Islands to India and Asia, there's so many things constructed around this time that focus on the summer solstice that I think it's obvious there's a shared knowledge there. You know,
right.
And I don't know. I think that we may have lost any ability to find out as much as we need to know about Stonehenge, or we're looking at it from such a simple perspective that it's going to take a lot of advancements in science dating-wise before we can really see how old it is. But I think Stonehenge is probably a lot older than they think it is, but I definitely think it's a part of a much larger complex. We've seen these protrusions, and LIDAR has helped that a lot. You know, they've used LIDAR in South America in these jungles and stuff to find cities and civilizations that the Aztec built that they had, and Mayans built that they had no clue the Mayans had even built. And now you're using something very similar to that, and you don't have to weed out and take out the trees and stuff in England, especially around the area of Stonehenge, and you're seeing these anomalies in the landscape that kind of point to the fact that was a pretty large structure there. And, you know, everybody talks about if civilization's so old, then there would be something left. Well, no, not unless it was stone, and anything that was stone, we can't date without some sort of secondary method of dating, whether it be erosion or you know, building materials inside the stone. So, you know, it would be easy for that to have been a timber structure, or even a larger stone structure that another group of people come in and just, you know, that was a big thing back then. Okay, you've built this to show our power, we'll destroy it. So I could easily believe that Stonehenge was a much larger installation at one point.
What do you think it may have been used for at that one point? Because as you were talking, I looked up because I couldn't remember what parallel it was in. I was going to see if it was in the 66 parallel, and it wouldn't. But the way that it's shaped, its degrees, it's like in the 51st parallel. They equal the way it's shaped and stuff, and degrees and all that. And I'm terrible at math, but they equal the lat long of the exact monument. But based on what you've read about Stonehenge, what do you think it could have been used for?
Almost all of these, regardless of the society, they almost always have some sort of religious implication. And for us, religious implication only kind of we're looking at it from a monotheistic controlled society, one God, one belief, one faith. Pagans and polytheistic religions had a lot of different things, and the reason they had all these different belief structures and gods and stuff is they kind of incorporate math, science, and everyday life into this religion, and most pagan religions are lumped in all together because they're all earthly religions based on earthly things. And so it very easily could have been something that they used for a mathematical reason or for a scientific reason, and that to them is a religious reason. And to me, I would think that it is a demonstration of a knowledge that they have obtained, more than likely a celestial knowledge, because that seems to be really important for all these ancient civilizations. The Mayan calendar is based off of sky gazing, basically, and they were able to do that within a couple hundredths of being correct, right. As far as they had 365 point whatever, and it's the same number of days we had. The Romans who came after them not able to do it to that degree of, actually they're inaccurate for the most part. I think they do 365 maybe, and they're off ever so many years. They're off a full day. So I think it probably has something to do with timekeeping and harvest and things of that. It's probably a multifaceted tool. To me, the real question is, how did they know how to build it? And how is it that all of these civilizations seem to have gained this knowledge right around the same time, and then through the same method?
Yeah, and it's like it's lost to us now.
Yeah.
So
some knowledge we just understood, we become to understand the process of, say it was something that they viewed as magical, and we understand the process, so we forget the method. But you've got to understand, without the Mayans, there's no zero in the counting system in mathematics. Right. European countries didn't use zero as a fixed numerical representation. They were the ones to do that. And it's not to say that they're not intelligent enough to do it, but how did they do it more expediently than civilizations who had more food, civilizations who had more opportunity to be at peace? Because they were not at peace, and they were starving. All these huge Mayan cities they built, somehow they got the engineering ability to build those, but they couldn't feed the people. And so most of those were abandoned well before the Spanish came. They slowly started filtering back in after that, and then disease knocked them out. But I don't know. To me, it's more of a question of how did they come up with building it. And it all hits right in that same timeline that Dr. Carlson and Graham Hancock kind of look at, that Unger Dryas period right after what they consider to be the melting of some ice caps in North America. And, I mean, you're looking at 10 to 11,000 years ago there, and that kind of predates our preconceived notions of what we consider civilization. So if civilization was older than that, maybe that was lost.
Well, and I totally get what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. There's an article that I just saw yesterday. We'll talk about sometime in December, but it's basically talking about Antarctica. And in that, and when I'm going to say what it says, you're going to be like, you're not going to believe it. But it's talking about how if a parallel universe did exist, the probability would be that it would be in Antarctica. And some scientists think that it's possible, and they think they have located it. And they've been working on this theory since 1953. And I think that's the same time after they came up with this theory, shortly after that is when Antarctica was off limits to everybody. And I just found that article fascinating. I don't have it pulled for today, but, like Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids, Antarctica, and there's other places around the world. You've got several places that are significant for several reasons. And, some of this technology that they used to build these has been lost. And the LiDAR radar, it's on telling what could really be under Stonehenge that we don't know about yet.
Oh, I think that literally what's sticking out is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, and the sad thing about, to some people, if you don't find this huge stone structure, then you've not found anything. We know more about most civilizations because we found basically their dumps,
right,
where they threw out trash. And if we found that at Stonehenge, we would know twice more than we would if they had left this huge stone structure. But for the time and the effort and the size of these stones, I wouldn't expect it to be a large stone structure surrounding it. I mean, that was kind of their focal point, and that's kind of what they done. Or it is even possible that, as old as Stonehenge is, it was built to replace something much larger that was there before.
Right. And you also, if you look at Easter Island with the heads buried, when they dug down, their full bodies attached to those heads.
Yeah. And that's one of those places. I can't remember the island, but it's an island that is in that chain, has this small, well, it's not small, but they have this shrine built. And on the summer solstice, as the sun rises, it comes through and shines directly through the front door onto an altar. We can tell by ruins of previous construction that at one point they'd been off, and that they actually had to move this and readjust and change the doorway. And it originally was a much smaller structure that was built onto. We can date what they've added to it because it has wood construction. However, we cannot date the previous construction. We don't have an idea of how long that is. And when you get into, especially those island areas, that's when you get into a lot of places that we really know a lot less about. And it's fascinating at the ideal that these were built by seafaring people that has nowhere near the ability to travel oceanically as we do. And I don't know, ancient civilizations blow me away. And I think we don't give it enough credit for what they built and the magnitude of the construction projects they took on.
I think you're totally right. We're going to step away and take a break. We'll have all new Ned Said and a all new Mysterious Appalachian Mountains with Seth. When we come back, we're going to talk about some possible JFK mob ties, and we're going to talk about the opioid epidemic. Opioid epidemic. You're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. We'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome to the Mysterious Appalachian Mountains with Seth and Earl. We got a story out of Henderson County here in Kentucky, and the city is called Reed, Kentucky. This was in 1988. An artifact hunter driving down a country road in broad daylight spotted what he at first took to be a deer standing by the side of the road. Then it stood up on two legs and ran off into the thick brush, described as being 6 or 7 feet tall, covered in brown hair and very fast. Location was the Ohio River. And yeah, man, this is an artifact hunter, and yeah, I mean, he found the wrong thing. He wasn't hunting for Bigfoot, but he found Bigfoot. And man, honestly, most of the time when somebody sees Bigfoot, it's when they're not out looking for him, man. Bigfoot researchers rarely see Bigfoot. It's mostly people, they're just your everyday people that see Bigfoot. Non-believers, actually, that don't believe in Bigfoot usually see Bigfoot. That's what I hear from Bigfoot researchers. And yeah, man, they always say Bigfoot is really fast. So, I mean, that's not out of the ordinary. I definitely find this sighting possibly as credible. But I don't know why he thought it was a deer. I guess if you're driving fast down the road and stuff, and you see something move that fast, you might think it's a deer. But yeah, man. And you also hear a lot of stories about Bigfoot being in the brush and stuff. I don't know if Bigfoot is very aware, and it seems like he is very aware of when like people is coming around and stuff. And yeah, I believe Bigfoot is very intelligent and knows when people is coming and stuff, and is the ultimate camouflager and can hide better than us humans, man. I believe Bigfoot is out in these woods we may not even know. It's untelling how many times we run across Bigfoot and not even know it. We possibly pass bushes, mountains. When we go fishing, we might on the bank, like the other side of the bank and stuff, when we pass it, I mean, Bigfoot could be there and we may not even know it, man. So I find that story very credible and possibly true. And this has been the Mysterious Appalachian Mountains with Seth and Earl. Y'all have a good night, and God bless.
You're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum with Goose. We'll be back after these messages.
Hello, everyone. This is Gary Sloan. The City of Coal Run Village Mayor Andrew Scott and City Commissioners Big Joe Atkins, Trey Deskins, Beverly Joe Osborne, and Mike Steele encourage you to shop local. With over 200 businesses in the City of Coal Run Village, they offer games, restaurants, gas, auto parts, cars, and much more. You'll find this and so much more waiting for you in the City of Coal Run Village. Shop local and shop often.
It's now time for Ned Said on Here to Chew Bubblegum.
Years ago, cigarettes were used to treat asthma.
From the heart of Appalachia, located under a shopping mall near the city that moves mountains, you're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum with Goose and Dirty Dan.
And welcome back to Here to Chew Bubblegum. I am Goose. In the studio, filling in for Dirty Dan this week is my good friend Justin Perkins,
a.k.a. Dingy Dave.
Dingy Dave.
Dingy Dave.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I'm even growing a beard.
Yeah. I noticed that. Are you trying to be like Dirty Dan, grow the beard?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you cook, you have to throw a dish towel over your shoulder.
I don't have enough thumbs to cook. So I only got 1 1/4 thumbs. So I can't.
Oh, well, we're going to talk about some stuff here, and then we're going to have a Believe It or Not episode. And one of the things that we're going to start off with is this was recently posted on MysteryWire.com, the JFK mob ties. And after I read this, then I'll tell you about something else that we read that'll be coming up on a radio show this week. November 22nd, 2020, that marked the 1 year of, or I'm sorry, that marked 1 year ago on that day and on this date, this past year. So, marks the darkest anniversaries in American history, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Among the many conspiracy theories surrounding the murder, only one suspect has ever been prosecuted, an act that destroyed many lives. In the 59 years since that day in Dallas, the ties between JFK and the American mob have been well documented, along with Dallas, Miami, and Las Vegas played roles in the storyline that have emerged over the years. What's your thoughts about, just briefly, what's your thoughts about the JFK assassination? Why do you think stuff is still classified today?
Because the mob worked with the CIA, and that would be a big no-no.
Well, but, I mean, that's almost 60 years ago that happened. Wouldn't it be time to just come clean?
No, the government doesn't like to come clean, especially like, it's a unique situation because you've got let's say you've got a Republican in, and he was going to come clean. It's going to make Kennedy look bad. It's also going to make the CIA look bad, who, between George Herbert Walker Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney has a very thick tie to the CIA. So company guys aren't going to come forward and let out the CIA part of it. And then you take, like this time, Biden just said, no, we're going to sit on that for a while. Well, it comes out and maybe tarnishes, even though it shouldn't. It's one person, but comes out and tarnishes the Democratic Party because he was a Democrat. And I think it's really things just as naive as that. Plus, the ideal, the American public, that they can't trust the CIA or that the United States government ever had any dealings with the mob is a scary prospect for them, and it's better to just ignore it.
Do you think that once all the players have passed away, then eventually they may come clean?
I don't think you'll ever know the full truth. I just don't. And I think anything involving the U.S. government's always like that. I think you'll always get their version of the truth. The thing that kind of irritates me with we can't tell you exactly who the shooter is without their help, but the evidence that it didn't happen the way they said it happened is everywhere.
Oh,
and it's,
yeah. It did not happen.
Yeah, people still choose to believe that narrative. So even them coming forward, they'd find a way to deny it or sugarcoat it, and people would believe it because they've believed the original story for all these years.
Now, do you think it's a combination of mob ties or him putting too much pressure on other branches and offices demanding information and his extramarital activities?
Well, he was a headache for a lot of reasons for them, but to me, we know the mob and CIA will work together. We look at the Bay of Pigs. We know the mob's vested interest in Cuba, and we know the CIA's vested interest in Cuba, and we know they work together on that. But the mob got Kennedy elected, and not only did he not pay back what his father had promised the mob in terms of the power and influence they'd have over the president, he sent his little brother after him, and pretty hard. And it cost his little brother, too.
Okay. Now, this story, like I said, I read this on the radio show, and we didn't really get to talk about it a whole lot in length. I think I actually had to edit some of it out just due to time restraints because the radio show is only 1 hour. And this happened earlier this month. QAnon supporters gather in downtown Dallas expecting JFK Jr. to reappear. Did you hear about this?
Yes, I did.
Okay. This story says some believe the reappearance of John F. Kennedy's son, who died in a plane crash in 1999, will bring the reinstatement of or bring the reinstatement of Donald Trump as president. Sources of QAnon believers gathered in downtown Dallas in the hopes that JFK Jr. would appear, hurdling the reinstatement of Donald Trump as president. The supporters first gathered on a Monday night in Dallas around 1 p.m. There were several hundred people in Daley Plaza where President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Guess what? JFK Jr. did not show up. I didn't think he would show up.
Well, he's a busy guy. And, being dead that long, there's probably a lot of other places he had to go first. Yeah. And maybe next week.
Well, and I may get some hate mail over this, but when you got somebody that's putting stuff like this on the internet, first do your research. Don't be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out, that you're going to believe everything they type and they say. Do a little research. Now, we have talked on the show before about a possibility of JFK Jr. being alive, and I read that story before. Do I believe it? No. Could it be possible? Yes, it could be, because the Clintons, I think, have got to a lot of people. So
that part I believe.
It could be possible. But I guess what saddens me is that you've got people that are willing to believe in something so far as to just follow what some unknown person puts on the internet.
Well, he's not unknown anymore.
Well,
I mean, he is to them, and he is to most of HBO did an amazing series called Q Into the Storm. And
yes, they did.
Pretty well. I mean, they had the guy admit to it. Everything works out logistically. He may not be Q any longer, but you found the guy that made you look dumb for 6 months. Just look, I've done a lot of things that made me look dumb. Just look at it and go, all right, I got fooled, and go on.
You know, there's been so many times in my life that I've wanted to believe something specific that I probably didn't use the best judgment. And I look back now, and I wish I could have done things different. But, you know, all I want to say is when you read anything on the internet, do your research, take it with a grain of salt. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I've learned that recently over the past couple of months. I won't say how I learned that. But if you really want to make a difference, start with yourself. And how can you make yourself or those close to you, how can you make a difference in their lives? And then expand out. And for me, anybody that you have a positive influence on, if you help somebody in a certain way, no matter what it may be, if you smile at somebody, if you hold the door open for somebody, if you have kind words to say to somebody, that person may take that and affect somebody else. So like a whole chain you know, just being nice to one person may affect 100 people. Yeah. 99 of them you're not even aware of. But if you want to make a change, really make a change, start with yourself, start with those close to you. And like I said, don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice.
That's all. I mean, what else about JFK do you want to say?
Look, I've already got tons of hate mail on my email on Talk Junkie because I've mentioned him a couple times, especially talking about presidents. And, you know, he's not the worst president ever. I cleared that up on an episode of Talk Junkie. I identified that gentleman. I don't, you know, we like to make martyrs and heroes out of people that are just everyday people. He made mistakes. He done bad things. He tried to do some good things. He kind of just is a person. But as far as JFK Jr. goes, you know, just a guy who, I mean, had a tragic childhood, you know, and had to live through a lot. I don't know a ton about him. I've never heard anything awful about him. He seemed to be just a fine, normal person. And I don't know, it's kind of disrespectful to his memory to say, oh, yeah, he's coming back and he's going to stop the New World Order. And it's like, I don't know. I don't get it. Remember him for whatever his accomplishments were. I know he was a publisher. I think he had a magazine called George.
George, yeah.
I mean, you know, he done a lot of things in his life. And it's hard to probably for him to outlive not only the shadow of his father, but also the shadow of his uncle and his mother. You know, I don't know. I kind of feel bad for his family. Why would he be the guy to come back? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why they put him in this situation. And I don't know. There's a lot of real world problems out there you could deal with that didn't involve bringing zombie JFK Jr. back.
There you go. Okay. So JFK Jr., you think he's dead?
Well, no, he's dead.
Okay. Elvis Presley.
He's dead.
Let's see. Tupac.
Dead.
Biggie.
Dead.
Okay. Is there any person that you think could have faked their own death? And if so, who is that person and why do you think that?
No famous person in modern times. I just, especially today, I just don't think it's possible. First, there's the legality, and then there's, you know, convincing friends and family. The legality is probably the hardest part. I mean, I'm sure there's people in other countries that's done it. I'm sure there's criminals that have done it. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Betty White may have fooled us all. She may not even be alive at all. She may be completely dead, but just got a stand-in. I don't know, but I can't think of anybody that I believe faked their death.
What about Kim Jong-un? Do you think he's dead or alive?
Oh, no, I think he's dead. And if he wasn't, I think his son would have went ahead since he went into hiding and took him out to make sure he had real control. Those guys were cut out. He killed his own uncle.
So, yeah, I
mean,
he did.
So, Daddy wouldn't last long if he got in charge.
You think he's dead and somebody behind the scenes over in Korea is pulling the strings, right?
Un or Il, the son or the Dad.
The fat chubby one right now that supposedly had heart surgery.
No, we're not lucky enough for him to die. He's still alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, but there's not been a lot of stuff about him come out, over the past year.
Yeah, but he's good friends with Dennis Rodman. Can you imagine how much fun it is to hang out with Dennis Rodman? He's not got time to be a mean dictator.
Now it would be fun to hang out with Dennis Rodman.
Maybe not safe, but fun.
I would totally agree with you there. Going back to Elvis just for a second. I mean, in the 70s, 77 or 78, whenever he passed away, you didn't have internet, you didn't have camera phones. It would have been easier, I think, for him out of any one of those that we named to get away with it. It's easy to get a birth certificate, Social Security number. Even today's age, you can still do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell how to do it on the show, but you can still do it. You could do, this ties back into JFK's mob associations. If you've ever watched any mob movies or you ever had any mob siders and they wanted to get new IDs and stuff, you could follow the ways that they did.
Well, look, I'm not saying it's not possible in general. I would even go as far as to say maybe it's as high as one person a year does it. Like, I'm not saying you can't do it, because I can't remember the case, but there was a criminal who faked his death for life insurance money and collected the life insurance money and then got caught trying to do it again. Now, it's definitely possible. I just don't think it's as possible for high-profile people. And somebody like Elvis, I don't know that Elvis would want to not be in the limelight. And that's kind of a problem for performers, is them not wanting to be.
What about Michael Jackson? You think he's dead?
I think if he could have faked it, he definitely would have. Especially if all the things they said about him are true, because it would have been advantageous for him to do so. But I think for all the people on the list, including Elvis and Tupac and Biggie, I think it would be harder for him, because worldwide, no, it might be easier for him. Because I see more people that look like Michael Jackson every day that have went so far to butcher their face and have the surgery. Actually, if anybody could do it, it's Michael Jackson. I've changed my own mind. If anybody could do it, it's Michael Jackson, because I can give you 20 people on TikTok that look just like Michael Jackson.
Well, and there is that video that, and I have seen it. It is the legit corner van. It is, and somebody fitting his appearance does hop out of the back of it.
Well, the only thing about Michael Jackson is, there's a lot of parents and court systems that want to have a very serious talk with Michael Jackson, and it's hard to hide from the government unless they're the ones that are hiding you. That's the only thing that would make me think it's hard for him to do it.
Well, right, and I don't see like a county official, like a coroner, getting involved in something like that. Even if they're paying them out, they're not going to take them. They're going to be so cautious to cover their rear end, they're not going to leave any loose ends.
If I thought he was innocent of those crimes, if I think he's guilty of those crimes, deal's off. And I'm afraid I think he may be guilty. But if I thought for a second he was innocent and he offered me Bubbles the chimp and I was a coroner, I would do it. If I thought he was innocent. But if I believe he's guilty, so I wouldn't help him. But if I thought he was innocent, I would take Bubbles the chimp and help him. Because I always wanted a pet chimp.
Moving on to the opioid epidemic. This story recently come out 5 years after the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention initiated crackdown on an opioid pain medication. Experts have concluded that the policy has been a miserable failure. Overdose doses have gone up, not down, and now courts are starting to recognize that the arguments used to justify the crackdown was largely bogus. So these numbers they push out are false, and now you have courts of law calling them out, said Dr. Dan Lard. Dan Lard. I would hate for my name to be that. As a Las Vegas physician, Lard and his unique vantage point from which to evaluate the great opioid crackdown. Lard is a pain management doctor and attorney who represented patients who suffered pain after being denied legal medications. Of the 50 million Americans plagued by chronic pain, about 20 million depend on prescription opioids to try to lead a somewhat normal life. Since 2016, those millions have suffered because of a war on legal pain meds. Chronic pain patients are basically in a fight for their lives, Lard said. There have been under attack for several years now, and anti-opioid sentiment and sort of the overreaction to opioid crisis. Large says the campaign against opioids is largely about money. More than over 1,500 civil lawsuits have been filed against drug companies by state and local governments, including in Nevada. Officials and trial lawyers are, as they eye multi-billion-dollar settlements, but the lawsuits, most of which now accuse Big Pharma of being a public nuisance for causing the opioid epidemic, are starting to fall apart. Have you saw the new Hulu series, Dope Sick?
No, I've not watched it.
I have heard some co-workers talking about it. I've not watched it either, but they said there was one episode, or maybe, I don't know if it takes place in Harlan, Kentucky, or they, say it took place there. I don't know if it's the whole series or one episode, but they say it's really good to watch, and it goes along with that story.
Everybody I've heard has bragged on that. It's one of them things that it's good, but it makes you mad by the end. Like, first of all, the guy deserves the last name Lard. He is a pain management doctor and a lawyer. He is quite possibly my least favorite human being I've ever met in my life, and I've never met him. I would say that there's probably some truth to that article, because the war on drugs, regardless of the decade and the time period, is always been a failure, and it's a failure because of the people leading it. The people leading it do not want to attack the people that make them money, and the people that make them money are Big Pharma. Just like CNN doesn't want to say anything bad about anybody that may manufacture certain medicines that are highly promoted right now, because they are sponsoring every show segment on every show they got right now. We know that OxyContin in particular, they had a guy in Florida that they sat down with and made sure he took the medicine accurately and dosed him to the highest possible human amounts every day of the week, just to see if they could do it without him overdosing because of the coating. And then they turned around and handed it out like candy. There's some personal responsibility there. Mm-hmm. There is. And there's some people that are going to abuse it no matter what. The problem is you've got legal drug dealers selling it to them, and you've got people in law enforcement going out and putting their life on the line to have to deal with people who are getting drugs legally who don't need them. Now, I'm sure there's people in pain management hospitals that are under the care of pain management physicians that do need it. I've never seen anybody go after them. The issue is with the narcotic once it goes from being legally prescribed to being illegally distributed. That's where the government can step in on a law enforcement level and try to stop that. That has nothing to do with people legally getting and taking the medications. Like everything else in life, it's not black and white. It's not right or wrong. It's not a simple one-sided thing. That's one side of the situation. The other side of the situation are doctors who were getting incentivized to prescribe a medicine that was too powerful and didn't need to be prescribed to most of the people that were getting it. So there you have a doctor doing something illegal. You go to Florida back in the late 90s, early 2000s, hit up 4 different doctors and get 4 different prescriptions for OxyContin. That created the OxyContin highway. It's obvious there's an issue, but the court cases are falling apart because you can't beat money. I think the state of Kentucky did. I think they actually beat Purdue Pharma.
Yes.
But for the most part, they're going to pay out what they're going to pay out, and then they're going to walk away scot-free. They're paying out small percentages of the multi-billions of dollars they're making getting people addicted to drugs. Again, there's some personal responsibility there, because some people are going and getting it just because they want to get high. Some people are getting it not understanding the dangers of it, and some people are getting it because they can't live with the pain they're in. It's the court system and the media and a lot of other people try to break it down to this simple question of right and wrong, and it's a multifaceted problem, and it takes a multifaceted response.
Well, in our area, Purdue's Pharma, when people reach out from 2003 to 2006 about the aftermath and about what a hard time people were having in our area, their solution was to send out $10,000 checks to these small town police departments so they could buy whatever kind of equipment they needed to combat this. And they did that for a couple of years, and then they came back and stopped. Not that they weren't willing to do it anymore, but our state attorney had heard about that, and he's like, whoa, you all can't do that. So, like you said, it is about money, and it is sad for our area to look at some of the places that it has affected and some of the people it has affected. I mean, you've had school teachers, you've had police officers, you've had coal miners, you've had everybody that were in it. We're doing the right thing, we're getting it legal, and then they get cut off and they had no other choice but to go get it by other means, and they were started. And
well, that's the issue, is that's like one of those ridiculous first response things is, let's cut off the people that are doing it legally. Why would you cut off the people that are doing it legally? They're not the issue. The issue are the people that are doing it illegally. And when you cut off the people that are doing it legally and it's in their system, even if they was to be, and a lot of times it's not the case, but even if they was to be to the point that they didn't need it pain-wise, they physically need it because it's an addictive drug.
Right.
Because the guy that Purdue Pharma went to at the FDA that said it's not addictive, they offered him big money and he quit and come to work for them because he knew it was addictive. I don't know. I've never understood that approach to the drug issue. I mean, it's I don't know. Actually, a guest and me have worked on an episode just about this forever for Talk Junkie, and what we're waiting on is there's a great docuseries. I believe it's on HBO. About the opioid epidemic, and one of the leading doctors to kind of fight back and go, hey, we don't need to be prescribing this, was a doctor over in Virginia. And I reached out to his office, and they've been kind. I've had a little bit of correspondence. I'm just waiting on him to see if he can come on the show and talk. He was actually on that documentary, but I mean, he really put forth a lot of effort to try to stop that. And I don't know, it for people in our area, it really impacted us at a level that, kind of like crack cocaine done in the 80s.
Yeah,
it impacted poor, impoverished black neighborhoods in California because that's where it was introduced. And, Oxycontin in particular impacted, seems to be more so than other places, poor white communities in Appalachia because that's where it got its foothold.
Well, especially too, in the county that we're both from, when you see somebody walking beside the road and on their right arm, on their upper part of their arm, they got Oxy wrote on their arm, tattooed there. I mean, that's sad.
That's a level of commitment. You go from mom to Oxy.
Yeah, you got that tattooed on their arm, and I don't even know if that person is still alive. It's been a long time since I saw him, so I would probably assume not. But I wanted to just mention that was also, that article was on MysteryWire.com as well. And I wanted to talk about that last before we take a break, because we're going to step into an episode of Believe It or Not with myself and Justin. And after that's over, we'll come back and wrap everything up in open discussion, maybe talk about and give our opinions on a few things. And that's it. So what do you think about that?
Sounds good.
We're going to take a break, and you can hear Believe It or Not with Justin Perkins and myself right here on Here to Chew Bubblegum.
It's now time for Believe It or Not with Justin and Goose.
Hey, this is Justin, and some of the best things in life just are not... That opening kills me. I do it every time.
You mean keep going?
No, just keep going.
Okay.
Look, people, I'm not a professional, and I just asked Goose about his opening. But this is Believe It or Not.
Jot 'em down, store. Love from Abner. I'm Goose. Welcome to Believe It or Not.
And to the listener, that the guy that I know him personally, he sent me a message about that opening. I have the story about Goose's opening now, so I can tell you next time I talk to you. But I was honestly thinking about that while I was doing my opening. And
Well, that's why I looked weird when you said that, and I looked up at you. So,
for a podcaster, talking's not my specialty. But today, we're going to talk about Charles Manson, and I really think most of the people native to Knott County, like a good chunk of them, are going to know exactly why we're talking about Charles Manson on Believe It or Not. And I know we don't always stay right in Knott County. I mean, it would get kind of boring if we don't branch out some, but this actually takes place right in Knott County. Charles Manson did live in Knott County for a while.
Yes, he did.
And I always heard when I was younger that was a rumor, that it wasn't true and stuff. And then as I got older, thanks to the internet, I've been able to verify that. But, was that a big thing around your group of people growing up? Like, did you hear about that a lot?
We had never heard that. I had heard in my early teens that he lived in Ashland. And I think I heard that from an interview he was on with Geraldo. He was talking about how he, lived in Ashland, Kentucky with his grandparents. And I had never heard the Knott County thing until the article that you're going to talk about come up.
I was probably in my teens, and I don't remember this article.
Oh, I actually remember when that hit the newsstand in Knott County.
I didn't remember it, but after going back and reading this, that's definitely where I got my information, that had been passed around, because it's a very small town, and something like that. It's one of those things I don't think people were necessarily proud of by any means, but it was one of those things that he was so notorious that just any thought of any connection with him, because in Knott County, it feels like sometimes you don't have a lot of connection to the outside world. And really, if you don't look back at the history of the county, you may not know. James Steele is from Knott County, one of the finest writers I've ever had the pleasure of reading in my life, and Rebecca Gayheart. I grew up right up the road from Rebecca
she's
Gayheart.
Right from your area.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different, but especially music-wise, and a lot of times it's older music that we didn't experience or isn't as prevalent today, but there's a lot of big tie-ins with Knott County, and Manson definitely not a positive person, but it's always interesting to find out something like that, because it's something that you don't expect. Like, you hear stuff about that every little town you go in, such and such was here, or so-and-so was here, and you don't hear a lot of that in Knott County, but when you do hear one, it's a doozy. I came across this article. It's from the Northern Kentucky Tribune, but it's completely in reference to the article you were talking about that Ron Daly wrote. I guess Troublesome Creek Times sent a letter kind of asking Manson about his time in Knott County, and he replied back.
Yeah, he replied back, but Ron didn't originally get the letter. An autograph collector had got the letter, and Ron was looking. The internet was just starting back then, so it wasn't, like it is today. And I don't remember how Ron found out about it. He might have been like in the catalog of autographs he was looking at, and the description, if I remember it correctly, the description of the signed letter by Charles Manson talking about his childhood was, described as that. And Ron made the possibility that this could be his letter that he wrote like a year or so prior. So once they get confirmation of that, Ron actually gets the letter sent to him. And they thought originally, and I think they still think, that the reason it didn't come back to Ron is that one of the prison guards that was in charge of sending out Charles Manson's letters had worked out a deal on the side. And so it's untelling how many missing letters that was supposed to get to people that didn't.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't know all that. So this is kind of a mix-up kind of article, because it's a new article referencing the old articles. I'm assuming, because you have better memory of that than I do, that once they did obtain the letter, then Troublesome Creek Times did a couple pieces about it.
Yes, they did. And
spawned the folklore of
and I think they actually printed the letter or copied the letter, and because I actually worked in radio in Hyman at that time, so I mean, I actually remember it being big news. Of course, I was really young. I was like 19, 20 years old. So,
well, that's an interesting thing. Though, like, imagine if that happened today. Like, it would be more common knowledge. I'm one of them guys. I see the good and bad in technology all the time, but that is one of the good is just the amount of knowledge and information that's out there. This is such an easy story to track down now because, when I was younger, barring that article or anything like that, there was very little opportunity to track anything down and verify something like that.
Right.
They could have said Elvis lived in Neely, and you wouldn't have had no
you wouldn't have no way to know.
Yeah.
And that may have been where that come from. Because you would have been like probably 8 or 9 when this came out.
Probably.
So and that's where it come from. So.
Yeah. All right, this is a big article, but it's definitely worth reading. It's like I said, it's Northern Kentucky Tribune. The article was written July 27th of 2019, and I'm just going to pull some parts from the article. And the first line of this first part's referencing the letter that he received back from Manson. As you read the letter below, keep in mind how focused he remained in his writing about this part of his life, referencing the part of his life in Kentucky. I have read dozens of his letters and autograph journals. There's usually a psychotic break in which he goes off on a tangent, including Hitlerisms or his spiritual claims. Since Manson was born in November 1934 and his mother did not get out of prison until 1942, it is likely he was around 8 to 10 years old when he was in Knott County. So it kind of gives you a frame of reference. We're not talking pre-murder Manson. You're talking a very young I almost said Marilyn Manson. You're talking a very young Charles Manson. And was that the impression that, because you kind of actually got the correct information right off. See, I was always under the impression as a kid, not really having any information about it, like he was here as an adult. So I thought, he moved here. Now later on in life, I learned that to be different. But when I was younger, it scared me to a certain degree because I was like, this psychopath was here. And it could have been our family or anybody. I didn't put the time frame into when I was alive and when the murders happened because I was so young.
Now let me throw this out at you. I'm making a little heat for this. What if he was, in Knott County during that time and something happened to him that transformed him into the person that he became?
It's easily possible. Really that there's nothing to say that wasn't the case. Obviously, and they talk about it here, as much as he talked about his time in Kentucky, it influenced him. But there is a book that got released a couple years ago, and I really didn't think about it until you just said that. There's a guy who did a real big study on Manson and Manson's involvement with the government and police officials, and this one particular clinic in California. I don't want to butcher the story because I don't have a great memory, and I'd have to go back and read the book again and refresh my memory on it. It's an excellent book, one of which I wish I could remember the title of. But basically, Manson was in trouble with the law nonstop in California. Yeah. Somebody kept helping him get out of trouble. He was seeing a doctor that has a lot of significance in regards to some cases. You remember the case of the CIA guy who jumped out the window? Yeah. This is a doctor that was involved with that program. So it's an interesting book, and it kind of goes down how they may have helped teach Manson to brainwash these people that end up following him. And once this book come out, that clinic that had been opened all that time shut down.
So you're saying that it's possible that Manson could have been in Project MK Ultra.
Probably either that particular project or like a subset of that, right? Or maybe even a follow up to that. But right. Most definitely, like if you read this guy's book, this guy's not making any big, huge illogical leaps. He has that doctor visited Manson in prison. Right. I mean, there's so much documentation there that. And he's got a lot of declassified stuff. He's also got a lot of witnesses, which is hard to get with a lot of these things. Yeah. But I believe 100% that was after reading that book. And like I said, it's not a book put together obviously that is a conspiracy theory to a certain degree, but it's not put together kind of illogically, because you've got some conspiracy theory books are just everywhere. This one's pretty precise. And you got to look, this guy got hired to write an article maybe in the 90s, and he never turned in the article. He just kept writing for like 20-some years until he completed the book. And I mean, he focused all his time. It's a fascinating book, and I'll have to try to go back and remember the name.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
name and the author. I should have done that.
Definitely message that to me. And, before you get back to your story, just real quick, a point. I've read online, and I want to ask your opinion. There's a lot of people say that was all an act, that Charles Manson wasn't crazy. From what I've read, I can see where it could have been an act.
I think some of it was. I think he definitely had that personality. He was a lot different person before these drug episodes started to take place. And I think, just looking at it from the outside looking in, say you know nothing about Manson and you know nothing about, his actions with the cult. And then you just look at the trial and things that he done during the trial and stuff. Most good defense attorneys, you've got to pick a defense and stick with it. And really, it's hard that he got convicted the way he did based on his involvement. That's weird in itself.
Yes,
but
it is.
If you're going to pick a defense, insanity would be a great defense for a cult leader. He played the part really well in court. And I don't know how much of those actions come out beforehand. I know there was all this talk about things he would say, like on the farm they lived, or the ranch they lived on, and things he'd do during outbursts. But almost all those were during pretty high drug-induced areas.
Yeah, and you have to think for a second, too, those were from his supposed cult members.
Yes.
Of course, if he tells them beforehand, hey, if we get caught, I'm going to plead crazy. You all talk about the crazy stuff I did in the past. That could have all been premeditated.
And these people are on government-issued drugs.
Yeah.
Like, they're being dosed by... And if I'm not mistaken, if you read that book, I don't think the government's denying that at this point. The dosages that were given to Manson were government-issued drugs and government-determined doses. Like, I think they're pretty open about that. They just deny that they had any part in helping him get out of trouble.
Right.
But his record is absurd. You go back and look at it, say it's an assault or whatever it is, within a day, not just is he out of jail, but charges are dropped. And, he'll interview such and such at the sheriff's department or at the courthouse. And like, well, couple phone calls were made, and by the time it made it down to me, I was told just let him go. That's not something they're going to do for just anybody.
No.
He was either really charismatic and charming, or he had somebody pulling for him.
Right.
Daly in the article goes on to say, in response to a September 1993 letter to Charles Manson in prison concerning being in Knott County and being around the Blue Moon Cafe, he wrote, "Mom worked there after she got out of prison. I was 5 or 6. Law and order border town." And then he draws a smiley face under that on the thing. Moon was in jars then. Now, I got it under my fingers. My grandma's brother was put in prison and hung for a murder in Knoxville. I think that in Tennessee. It's been a long time since I ever thought, it's true, you can't take the heels out of the boy. I think I left my dipper pins in Eddyville, draws a prison. So a lot of the stuff he says is, obviously his age doesn't necessarily correlate with what time they think he was there. And, he makes these ridiculous, outlandish statements, but he can be traced back, or at least to his family, to working at the Blue Moon Cafe, and he was definitely there. Now, this article goes on to say that the Blue Moon Cafe no longer stands on the top of Jones Fork Mountain, but
which is false.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that. I seen it just months ago. And
same for me too.
It's abandoned. I mean, it's not in any type of repair. But you were telling me about a reporter.
And I can't think of her name. There's a reporter from Pike County that actually went to Pike Central, and she does a lot of TikTok videos from Pike County with the Hatfields and McCoys. And she was in back in the summer, and she actually went inside of it and was done some little TikTok videos about it, and I wish I remembered her username, but I think she's also got a YouTube channel. And but I mean, just the whole upstairs. I mean, and as soon as the downstairs, I mean, it's destroyed. But she shows it, gives backstory on it, talks about it, and it's really fascinating little video segments that she did.
Now, do you remember any time when that was anything other, like, wasn't it some apartments or something upstairs at one point?
Yes, it used to be some apartments upstairs, and I think even in her video, she said that back when Charles Manson's mom worked there, they actually lived in an apartment upstairs, and downstairs, that used to be a business of some sort back in the early 80s in the downstairs part. I cannot remember what it was. It may have even been like a little small restaurant at one time back in the early 80s.
So that place had been in business. That had been a local business. And, that's an odd place to land, to end up there. And I think that's one of those reasons why people from Knott County, they hear something about somebody, even if it's somebody as infamous as Manson being from that area, it's kind of something that piques their interest because it's hard to find Knott County on accident. It is a amazing place, in my opinion, when you do find it, but it's a hard place to find on accident.
Yeah. And I mean that place is like less than 5 miles from where I grew up at, and I never knew that when I was little, And
oh man, you imagine the scary stories on Halloween and stuff.
Yes,
if you'd have known that back then,
definitely.
It said all the time. Well, this is right after they said it's no longer standing, which it is. So I don't know because it's hard to determine who wrote this new article. It accredits so much stuff to Daly, but being from Knott County, I would assume he knew it was still standing. Or maybe there's a part of it that actually included that cafe that's gone. I don't know. But at the time Manson was in the vicinity of Knott County was a wet, allowing legal alcohol sales. I was told by the area residents that adjacent to the cafe were Jenny barns, in which women and men could have privacy. Most written accounts describe Manson's mom, Kathleen, as a prostitute, which may explain her purpose at the place. In a 1972 interview, she denied she was ever a prostitute. The building later used for other purposes, once including mission work in distributing clothes. So I'd heard the prostitution into that, but later on, once I heard all that, and the letter itself, the letter that comes from Troublesome Creek Times to Manson and his reply, and it looks to me like he just basically drew on their stationery that they wrote the letter in, and he kind of drew on it and wrote crazy stuff on it, and it's a decent amount of, you can look that up online and actually look at the letter and stuff, but to have such an infamous person come from Knott County, like, it's one of those things you kind of have to address. It's not like, we're definitely not glorifying Manson. I think it's pretty clear cut that he's not a great human being. But it is something that I think, especially a lot of people outside of Knott County wouldn't know. But I'd say it'd surprise you how many people inside Knott County wouldn't know that.
Yeah. You talked briefly on his sentence, how he was handed down. Now, he, conspired and put the people up to doing that, and supposedly controlled them to do that. But he himself actually didn't do anything, and he originally got the death penalty.
Yeah, and there's, if I'm remembering correctly, I think there's members of his group that actively committed murders that got out before he was ever paroled. Yeah.
Well, the one that drove the car, I can't remember, her last name I think was Bruner. She got paroled in the late 70s, early 80s.
There's something about the guy because, there's people. There was women trying to marry him. Yeah, towards the end of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, and there was when he was like in the early, a couple years before he died. He had a marriage certificate from a girl that was like 18, 19 years old.
I mean, it's people worry me.
And you have people fighting over his body and over his personal possessions that he had in prison, and I think that was just settled. Maybe a year. Well, it might have been late last year that was settled.
I would assume his estate, even though he's a convicted felon, his estate would own, any type of image of him, any type of intellectual property. Right. So there's probably money to be made from that. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, I don't know. It's a wild story, and not to say we mentioned he didn't do it. It is believed that he was responsible for quite a few murders on that ranch, but the problem is those were never proved. He was convicted based on the conspiracy trial that he convinced these people to do these murders.
Well, even his dad, his biological dad, disappeared. And he's never been found. So, that sends up red flags right there.
We know what happened.
And he actually took the name Manson, I think, from his stepdad. I can't think of the guy's first name.
Is it Maryland?
No.
I can't believe I didn't goof that up more than one time.
But, that's just... it's a small world, believe it or not. You can always shoot us an email, believe it or not, at heretechewbubblegum.com. That's believe it or not, spelled KNOTT. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time. And until then, have a good day.
See you guys.
You can always call, text, or leave a voicemail for Here to Chew Bubblegum at 606-373-3396.
I'm Dingy Dave, and I want to welcome you back to the smooth sounds of Here to Chew Bubblegum.
Welcome back.
We should do the whole show this way.
Whispering. Why am I whispering?
It's seductive, and it gets the lady listeners excited.
And we're segment 3. We're going to have open discussion about some topics. No,
Can't make it though.
No, I do want to thank you very much, Justin, for coming in and sitting in today, and you're a great co-host. Look forward to having you back. Look forward to doing some more Believe It or Nots with you. I love recording with you. I am really a huge fan of yours, and I'm blessed that you're my friend, and look forward to the future with you.
That's what I like about this show. You get your money's worth. I paid him $20 to say that.
Now, with
above and beyond.
With that being said, we're going to talk about some things here that may irritate some people. So if they do, you can address your hate mail to believe it or not at heretechewbubblegum.com.
TalkJunkie@gmail.com. I can just put it in my big folder of hate mail.
There you go. And I had heard about this from my son several weeks ago. And if you like documentaries, and if you like free documentaries, there's a really good one on YouTube. It's called Chris Chan, The Comprehensive History. And if you're not familiar with who Chris Chan is from Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, and he is autistic. He rose to fame in the early 2000s on YouTube with his hatred for homosexuals and people of a different race, and the troll hating on his. There's 60 episodes this guy's done on him. I'm up to episode 21. Number 10 is really, really hard to watch because, just a classic example of an internet bully. And I feel sorry for Chris at points during this, and then there's points where
he makes you mad.
Yeah.
I've not seen this yet. So, I'm excited to check this out.
There is no heroes in this story. They're all villains. And so, check that out. And I sent you a link. You can go back and find the first episode. Check that out. Kyle Rittenhouse. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, here comes the hate. Again, I think a lot of people want to look at things through the lens of it has to be one way or the other. It has to be right, it has to be wrong. We live in a gray world. There is no black and white. I'll say this, that in the same week that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted, 2 other people were acquitted of very similar charges, one of which involving a police shooting, but they were both acquitted, and both of those gentlemen were African American. I believe, personally, that what he did was self-defense. Is my 17-year-old going to be running around that city with a semi-automatic rifle? No, he's not. But that's on the parents. I did see him. I watched the video, seen him try to get away numerous times. Then I seen him shoot 2 people. And that's a disturbing thing. And it's not where you want our society to be. But both of these individuals were Caucasian, not African American. So I didn't get the whole racial spin that CNN and these places put on it. But if the accusations are accurate and the convictions are accurate, and this one guy was a sex felon, a sex offender.
He was. It's proof.
I have no problem with anybody shooting him, regardless of race, religion, creed, desire to shoot. I don't care why they shoot. Probably should have just shot him to begin with.
One was a sex offender, and then the other one was a womanizer. He had abused several women physically.
Okay, there's two of them I didn't mind to see get shot. So I mean, well, it comes down, and I've done an episode over Joe Exotic, and we talked about it. You mentioned the same exact thing, that first thing about everybody always wanting her to be a hero in a story. There's not always a hero.
No.
But if these two people are these vile animals that they say they are, okay, you shot them. I mean, can you give a congressional honor for that? I don't know. I also think that the other two people who were acquitted for those gun crimes were also innocent. We have rights in this country for a reason, and it's not a racial thing. It's a right and wrong thing. He was in his element to do, because I know he was underage, but in that state you have the legal right to carry. Yeah. I mean, should he have been there? No. And they're saying he stopped a dumpster that was on fire from, maybe he was there trying to save his community, because you've seen that in a lot of different places all throughout history, even back to the Watts riots and stuff in the earlier part of the 90s and 80s and stuff into Los Angeles and stuff. Tearing up your own community because you're protesting something's not generally a logical solution to anything. I don't know. I'm lost on that altogether. And some of the biggest hate mail I ever got in my life on Talk Junkie is when I made a statement that I felt like Antifa was a terrorist organization, just like I felt like the Ku Klux Klan was a terrorist organization, just like I felt QAnon was a terrorist organization. I believe QAnon's attack on the Capitol was a terrorist act, and I believe that Antifa's destructions of cities is a terrorist act, and I treat them the exact same. I don't have a political leaning towards either one or a racial preference either way or the other. I think they're both a bunch of bad people, and the best I can tell from most of the things I see on TV, Antifa is a pretty large collection of spoilt, rich, white college students and old white hippies. So, the racial aspect doesn't get there for me.
Well, and I never understood that either. And, he did act in self-defense. If somebody hits you with a skateboard, I mean, you can kill somebody with that.
Well, the guy said he pulled a gun and was aimed it at him.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you said something, and I don't remember how you said it there, but, what Kyle did was right. It was justified, in my opinion.
Well,
that was right.
Legally, it's justified. It's self-defense.
I was so scared that the way that the world is nowadays, that it would be total opposite. And really, the media tried to paint it that way, that, he was the bad guy, and he was not the bad guy.
Well, I've noticed that, and it goes both ways. Fox will try to paint guys as heroes that are monsters, and CNN will try to paint heroes as monsters. It's just the way it is, and vice versa. They'll try to paint monsters as heroes. I don't know. Bullshit sells, and that's what they're peddling 24 hours a day.
And you heard that. Justin Perkins just cursed on Here to Chew Bubblegum.
The news can make me bad enough.
But he is absolutely correct over that. Okay, now, the next one I want to ask you about, this new COVID outbreak. I don't even know if it's COVID Okanami or Orentami or I've not read much about it. But this is a new one that comes from South Africa, and Dr. Fauci is encouraging people to get their booster shots now. Do you not find it suspicious that there's a new outbreak and they're pumping the booster vaccines?
I don't find it suspicious. I find it par for the course. It's what they need to do. They're close on this other medicine, and the government's already tied up a lot of money in these shots. They need to make their money off these shots as quickly as they can. The thing I want to get on to that involves that is the most racist thing I've seen in the entirety of my existence is, as soon as this outbreak broke out, Donald Trump put a travel ban on Africa for the second time, saying that you could not travel from Africa, and Biden had already told us that's racist, and you can't. No, Biden's president now, isn't he?
Yes.
So Biden put that out. But if Biden done that ban, didn't CNN tell us that the first ban was racist?
Yes.
When Trump, but
Yes.
that don't make sense. That would be.
Well, that kind of goes back to
That can't be right. Because, I mean, that would be completely and totally just playing favorites. You can't do that.
well, that kind of goes back to Captain America there winning his court case, What he did was right, And why do you think so many people nowadays can't distinguish right and wrong?
Because you got a really far left that's controlling one side of the media and a really far right that's controlling the other side of the media. And I think this may get me more. This is the show I done that people hated the most. I think the world's a lot better place than it's ever been statistically, and I don't think they like that. And I think they need to cause enough fear on each side to make us fall apart. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it.
But I mean, people, and I've mentioned this on the show before. If you don't share their same opinion, they get mad at you. They come after you. They try to attack you.
They give you
verbally, physically.
They give you 3 write-ups on environmental. Yeah, it happens. I mean, look, it's sad, but, also that's a choice people can make. I know there's things me and you disagree about.
Yeah.
I've never been mad at you over anything
No,
you felt.
no.
I don't think you've ever been mad at me.
No,
I've
not.
never talked to Elliot, and actually, I know there's no possible way that me and you and the guys at Spooky Family and Seth and Eli and Dirty Dan and Rebecca could in any way have all the exact same beliefs.
No.
But I've never been mad at you for anything you believed, and you have never been mad at me for anything I believed. We just believe different ways. And occasionally, I realize that I may be wrong. And maybe I need to look at something differently, and vice versa. Maybe sometimes I look at it and go, I feel like I was dead on with that, and their argument solidified that for me. I mean that's just how conversation and human interaction is supposed to work. But
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
a lot of people get really influenced by social media and news, and they feel and think a certain way. I can't tell you what's trending on Facebook, and it's because I don't look. I keep people on my page, and I look at the stuff. It's people I like. If there's somebody I'm interested in and I check out, I go check them out. But if it's a COVID-related story, or if it's a Trump-related story, or if it's a Biden-related story, I just hit snooze on it and go on.
I'm the same way, and you said something there that I do kind of disagree with. You classified the QAnon as a terrorist group. I don't think they're that smart to give them that much credit.
That's a good point. But and let me say this. I think that if the situation had been right, and we had been in a point in America where what they done really needed to be done, I actually would have supported it.
Well, yeah.
Same with Antifa. If they were protesting for the actual cause that they said they were protesting for, and they were doing it in a responsible manner, if it escalated out of control, I would support that. The ability to show the government that you're the actual source of power in the country and not them is very important. But when you waste it on a dude in a buffalo hat over something that, I don't know. I just, like you said, it's a bunch of really dumb guys.
Yeah. I mean,
and I believe there was a lot of government help there. I've seen the video of the supposed agent provocateur, and we know that happened at the World Trade deal back in Seattle in the 90s. We know that it's pretty odd. Guys in all matching, almost uniforms, come in and started this massive destructive thing, held up in the building, got released and got out, and all these other civilians got arrested. It's, we know agent provocateurs from the government are a real thing. So I don't know.
But you're exactly right. I mean, no matter what somebody's opinion is, I will never ridicule or make fun of them.
I didn't say I wouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, you're right. I may do that.
But I'm not going to hate you for it. I mean, even that.
I'm not going to hate you for it, and I will support and fight for your right to say your opinion, because, people's opinion matters.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hope if you told me.
And I guess that came off on people's opinion matters. I did not mean it. Everybody is important.
Yeah.
everybody that, that's what I mean.
And also, hearing people say things you don't agree with lets you know who those people are. Like if you tell me, was it Mambla, Man and Boy Lovers of America, whatever the pedophile deal is? You tell me the head of that organization and David Duke, the head of the KKK, are in a car crash and they all burn alive. Am I going to shed a tear? No, I'm not. But if you tell me I'm going to block all of them off Facebook and not allow them to talk, if you tell me you're not going to allow them to express themselves, I'm going to say you're wrong. Because I want to know who those people are. I want to know who those child molesters are so I can make sure they're not around my kids. I want to know who those racists are so I can make sure they don't influence people that I know and influence my thoughts. I don't want them spreading horrible pictures and things across the internet, but I don't ever want to silence anybody just because I don't agree with them.
I don't blame you, and I totally agree with you. Well, Justin, again, thank you very much for coming and sitting in. Is there anything you want to say before we close things out here?
No, my beard's not as immaculate as Dan's yet.
Your beard looks fine. Again, next week, Here to Chew Bubblegum will be hosted by Dirty Dan and Rebecca, and they will have special guest DJ Nikki, Paul Hemphill, and others in on the show. I'll be back on the 12th. Me and him both will be here. Don't forget about Cooking with Dirty Dan. You can see that on TikTok.
That's not what we want to see Dirty Dan do.
You can see that on TikTok. And we've not been able to do Honestly Get Real with Goose and Rebecca the last couple of weeks. We'll be bringing that back to you real soon. Be sure to check out Carbon Capture Shield, adventureswithpurpose.com, and the Till Valhalla project. Till Valhalla project. Thank you very much. Also, I want to say special thanks to Carlin for all the voiceover work. Be sure to check out friends of our show that has their own shows. I'm talking about CK and Uncle Bill over at deadpit.com. Justin Perkins with Talk Junkie.
I've heard that show's not much.
Oh, that show is great. Jordan and Brad are down on the holler. Seth Ambergy with Seth's Daily Podcast. Gertie, Elliot, and Beagle over at spookyfamily.com. The Mountain Mysteries Podcast with Chris Sloan. And if you're a fan of Cronkite, he's now known as PT. You can listen to him, Snowman, and Large Marge over at Paranormal Trucker on Yahoo. On YouTube. Man, I'm just having a tongue tie today. On YouTube. I almost said Yahoo again. If you want to awaken more, be sure to check out Rebecca Short on TikTok. I've had been on break too long. And you can find her on Twitch as Queen of the Flock 138. That'll do it for this week. We'll see you next week. And until then, so long for now.
Maybe I'm not going home. Maybe I'm just going to Dirty Dan's house.
There you go. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Tune in next time as we dive deeper into things the government doesn't want us to know.